The Emperor's Guard. We backtracked through the grass for a good 10 minutes to see if we could find my hearing aids, but it was way too dark to see anything. We literally had to hold on to each other's shirt, walking in a single file so we wouldn't trip over one another. It was the black ink that had poured out all around. It's hopeless, said Harry. They could be anywhere. Maybe we can come back with a flashlight, answered Amos. No, it's okay, I said. Let's just go back. Thanks, though. We walked back through the cornfields and then cut through them, and the back of the giant screen came into view. Since it was facing away from us, we didn't get any light from the screen at all until we'd walk around the edge of the woods again. That's when we were finally started to see the light again. There was no sign of the 7th graders anywhere. Where do you think they went? Said Jack. Back to the food truck, said Amos. They're probably thinking we're going to report them. Are we? Asked Henry. They looked at me. I shook my head. Okay, said Amos. But little dude, don't walk around here alone, okay? If you need to go somewhere, you tell one of us, and we'll go with you. Okay, I nodded. As we got closer to the screen, I could hear high on the hill was a lonely goat herd, and I could smell the cotton candy from one of the concession stands near the food trucks. There was lots of kids milling around in this area, so I pulled what was left of my hoodie over my head and kept my face down, hands in my pockets, as we made our way through the crowd. It had been a long time since I'd been without my hearing aids, and it felt like I was miles under the earth. It felt like the song Miranda used to sing to me, Ground control to Major Tom. Your circuit's dead. There's something wrong. I did notice, as I walked, that Amos had stayed right next to me, and Jack was close on the other side of me, and Miles was in front of me, and Harry was in the back of us. They were surrounding me, and they walked us through the crowded of kids, like I had my own Emperor's Guard sleep. Then they came out of the narrow valley, and once she saw the reason, there stood Peter and Edmund, all the rest of Ason's army, fighting desperately against the crowd of horrible creatures whom she had last night, and only now, in the daylight, they looked even stranger and more evil and more deformed. I stopped there. I'd been reading for over an hour. The sleep still did not come. It was almost 2 a.m. Everyone else was asleep. I had my flashlight on under my sleeping bag, and maybe the light was why I couldn't sleep, but I was too afraid to turn it off. I was afraid of how dark it was outside the sleeping bag. When we got back to our section in the front of the movie screen, no one had even noticed we'd gone. Mr. Tushman and Mrs. Rubin and Summer and all the rest of the kids were just watching the movie. They had no clue how something bad had happened. Almost happened to us. It's weird how that can be. How you could have a night like that, the worst in your life, but like nobody knows. Everybody else is just having an ordinary night. Like on my calendar at home, I would mark it off as being the most horrific days of my life. This and the day Daisy died. But for the rest of the world, it was just an ordinary day. Or maybe it was even a good day. But somebody won the lottery that day, probably. Amos, Miles, and Henry brought me Jack over where we'd been sitting before with Summer and Maya and Reed. And then they went and sat where they had been sitting before with Zima and Savannah and their group. In a way, everything was exactly as we had left it before we went looking for the toilets. The sky was the same, the movie was the same, everyone's faces were the same, mine was the same. But something was different. Something had changed. I could see Amos and Miles and Henry telling their group what had happened, and I knew they were talking about it because they kept looking over at me while we were talking. Even though the movie was still playing, people were whispering about it in the dark. News like that spreads fast. It was what everyone was talking about on the bus ride back to the cabins. All the girls, even the girls I didn't know very well, asking me if I was okay. The boys were all talking about getting revenge on the group of the 7th grade jerks, trying to figure out what school they were from. I wasn't planning on telling the teachers about any of what happened. And that's when they found out anyways. Maybe it was the torn sweatshirt, the bloody elbow, or maybe it was just that the teachers hear everything. When we got back to camp, Mr. Tushman took me to the first aid office, and while I was getting my elbow clean, he bandaged up my by the camp nurse. Mr. Tushman and the camp director were in the next room talking with Amos and Jack and Henry and Miles, trying to get the description of the troublemakers. When he asked me about them a little later, I said I couldn't remember their faces at all, which wasn't true. It's their faces I kept seeing every time I closed my eyes to sleep. The look of total horror on the girl's face when she first saw me, the way the kid with the flashlight, Eddie, looked at me when he talked to me, it was like he hated me, like a lamb to the slaughter. I remember Dad saying that years ago, but tonight I think I finally got what he meant. The aftermath. Mom was waiting for me in the front of the school with all the other parents when the bus arrived. Mr. Tushman told me on the bus ride home that they had called my parents to tell them what had happened with the situation that night before and that I was fine. He said the camp director and several counselors went looking for the hearing aids in the morning while we all went swimming in the lake, but they couldn't find it anywhere. Briarwood would reimburse the cost of the hearing aids, he said. They felt bad about what happened. I wondered if Eddie had taken my hearing aids with him as kind of a souvenir, something to remember me by. Mom gave me a tight hug when I got off the bus, but she didn't slam me with questions like I thought she might. Her hug felt so good, and I didn't shake it off because, like some other kids, were doing the same thing with their parents' hugs. The bus driver started unloading our duffel bags, and I went to find mine, and my mom talked to Mr. Tushman and Ms. Rubin, who walked over to her. As I rolled my bag towards them, a lot of kids who don't usually say anything to me were nodding hello and patting me on the back as I walked by them. "Ready?" Mom said as she saw me. She took my duffel bag, and I didn't even try to hold on to it. I was fine with her carrying it. If she had wanted to carry me on her shoulders, I would have been fine with that too, to be truthful. As we started to walk away, Mr. Tushman gave me a quick, tight hug, but he didn't say anything. Home. Mom and I didn't talk that much the whole way home, and when I got home to the front stoop, I automatically looked at the front door of the bay window because I forgot for a second that Daisy wasn't going to be there like always, perched on the sofa with her front paws on the windowsill, waiting for us to come home. It made me kind of sad when I walked inside. As soon as we did, Mom dropped my duffel bag and wrapped her arms around me and kissed me on my head and on my face like she was breathing me in. "It's okay, Mom, I'm fine," I said, smiling. She nodded and took my face in her hands. Her eyes were shiny. "I know you are," she said. "I just missed you so much, Augie." "Well, I missed you too, Mom." I could tell she wanted to say a lot of things, but she was stopping herself. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "Starving. Can I have a grilled cheese?" "Well, of course." She answered that immediately and started to make me a sandwich while I took my jacket off and sat down at the kitchen counter. "Where's Via?" I asked. "Oh, she's coming home with Dad today. Boy, did she miss you, Augie," Mom said. "Yeah, she would have liked that nature reserve. You know what movie they played? The Sound of Music." "You'll have to tell her that." "So, do you want to hear about the bad part or the good part first?" I asked after a few minutes, leaning my head on my hand. "Whatever you want to talk about," she answered. "Well, except for last night, I had an awesome time. I mean, it was just awesome. That's why I'm so bummed. I feel like they ruined the whole trip for me." "No, sweetie. No, they didn't. Don't let them do that to you. You were there for more than 48 hours, but that awful part lasted 1 hour. Don't let them take away the rest, okay?" "I know," I nodded. Did Mr. Tushman tell you about the hearing aids?" "Yes, he called us this morning." "Oh, was Dad mad because they're so expensive?" "Oh my gosh, of course not, Augie. He just wanted to know that you were all right. That's all that matters to us. And you don't let those thugs ruin your trip." I kind of laughed when she said thugs. "What?" she asked. "Thugs?" I teased her. "That's kind of an old-fashioned word, Mom." "Okay, jerks, morons, imbeciles," she said, flipping over the sandwich in the pan. "Cretins," my mother would have said, whatever you want to call them. "If I saw them on the street, I would," she shook her head. "They're pretty big, Mom," I smiled. "7th graders, I think." She shook her head. "7th graders? Mr. Tushman didn't tell us that." "Oh, my goodness. Did he tell you how Jack stood up for me?" I said. And Amos was like a bam, and he rammed his foot right into the leader. They both crashed the ground like in a real fight. It was pretty awesome, actually. Amos's lip was bleeding and everything. He told us there was a fight, but she said, looking at me with her eyebrows raised, I'm just so grateful you and Amos and Jack are fine. When I think about what could have happened, she trailed off, flipping the grilled cheese again. My Montauk cookie got totally shredded. Well, that can be replaced, she answered. And she lifted the grilled cheese onto the plate in front of me on the counter. Milk or white grape juice? Chocolate milk, please. I started devouring the sandwich. Oh, can you do it for that special way that you make it with the froth? How did you and Jack end up at the edge of the woods in the first place? She said, pouring milk into a tall glass. Jack had to go to the bathroom, I answered. My mouth was full. I was talking. She spooned the chocolate powder and started rolling the small wisp between the palms really fast. But there was a huge line, and we didn't want to wait, so we went towards the woods to pee. She looked up at me while she was whisking, and I know she was thinking we shouldn't have done that. The chocolate milk in the glass now had 2 inches of froth on the top. That looks good, Mom, thanks. And then what happened? She said, putting a glass in front of me. Well, I had a long drink of chocolate milk, and then I said, well, it's okay if we don't talk about it anymore, right? Is now okay? Oh, okay. I promise I'll tell you about it later when Dad and Via are home. I'll tell you every little detail. I don't want to have to tell that whole story over and over again, you know? Absolutely, Mom said. I finished my sandwich with 2 more bites, and I gulped down the chocolate milk. Wow, you practically inhaled that sandwich. Do you want another one? She said. I shook my head and wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. Mom, am I always going to have to worry about jerks like that? I asked. Like, when I grow up, is it always going to be like this? She didn't answer right away. She took my plate and my glass and put them in the sink, and she rinsed them with water. Augie, there are always going to be jerks in this world, she said, looking at me. But I really believe, and Daddy really believes, that there are more good people on the earth than bad people. The good people will watch out for each other and take care of each other, just like Jack was there for you and Amos and all those other kids. Yeah, Miles and Henry, I answered. They were awesome, too. It's weird because Miles and Henry haven't really been nice to me at all during the year. Sometimes people surprise us, she said, rubbing the top of my head. Well, I guess. Want another glass of chocolate milk? Oh, no, I'm good, I said. Thanks, Mom. Actually, I'm kind of tired. I didn't sleep too good last night. You should go take a nap. Thanks for leaving me Babu, she said, by the way. You got my note? She smiled. I slept with him both nights. She was about to say something else when her cell phone rang, and she answered. She started beaming and said, listen, oh my goodness, really? What kind? She said excitedly. Yep, right there. He was about to take a nap. Want to say hi? Oh, okay. We'll see you in 2 minutes. She clicked it off. That was Daddy, she said excitedly. He and Via are just down the block. He's not at work, I said. No, he left early because he couldn't wait to see you, she said. So don't take a nap quite yet. 5 seconds later, Via came through the door. I ran into Dad's arms, and he picked me up and spun me around and kissed me. He didn't let go for a long, full minute until I said, Dad, it's okay. And then it was Via's turn, and she kissed me all over like she used to when I was little. I wasn't until I stopped that I noticed a big white cardboard box they had brought with them. What's that? I said. Open it, said Dad, smiling. He and Mom looked at each other, and they knew a secret. Come on, Augie, said Via. I opened inside was the cutest puppy I've ever seen in my entire life. It was black and furry with pointy little snout and bright black eyes and small ears that flopped down.